Okay. Okay, there. Um, Not really sure what's going on. If you are seeing this and you want to be part of this panel, please join. I'm going to be muting my mic for a bit, but you can still see me. Okay, so I'm still not totally sure what's going on. I was invited to do this panel. I guess I should be looking over here. So I was invited to do this panel, but I'm not sure if the host is coming or it said that the panel was on at this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait till about 12:30, and if nobody joins, then I don't know. There's a few questions that I was sent that could be ones that could be asked, and so maybe I'll just answer those, and then if anybody sees this recording later, then they hopefully that my answers might help them out. I'm going to mute again for a sec. You know what? I think I'm just gonna pause the recording for a bit until 12:30 and then I'll start it again. Hello, my name is James Martin. I was invited to do a panel for this conference. Um, it was scheduled for today, kind of at the last minute, it seemed to me, but um, I was invited, so I'm going to do the panel anyways, I guess. And I was given a few questions, so maybe I'll answer those questions in this half hour here. And I know this is being recorded, so maybe if people are able to watch this later, they can do so and maybe get something out of this session. So let's start with the first question. So what is your opinion about pursuing a career in game development? Do you think it's a bit risky? Um, I wouldn't say that it is too risky. I think it can depend on the the area of game development you want to get into. I mean, if you want to become a programmer, then if you're willing to go to university, you can get a degree in computer science, and then at least if things don't work out, you could still get a job at a tech company. So there's kind of a fallback there, Like I went to university, I have a degree in computer science, so if I wanted to, I could work at a tech company. Now, if you want to get into something like game design, then that could be a little more risky because there isn't really a kind of a post-secondary education. Like there's no degree in game design necessarily. There are a lot of schools that might claim to teach game design, but there's also a lot of them that maybe just want your money. So you have to be like very careful and kind of look for reviews of different schools or find out what other people have said about the school to determine if it's kind of the right school to go to and um, if it's kind of well respected. And then art, you can go to college and kind of improve, kind of hone your craft and become a good artist. I mean, realistically, any one of these areas, you don't have to go to school, go to another school, as long as you are good at these things and you show a lot of work in one of these areas, and then I think a lot of companies would be interested in hiring you. It kind of just depends on the the company. Let me think. What else could we say? Like there you think I mean another area that you could get into would be QA or quality assurance, which is where you make or where you try and test games. It's something I've done. I'm kind of realizing that I haven't actually introduced myself, so maybe I should do that first. So my name is James Martin. I'm the lead programmer for Funky Finger Productions. I also do some console ports, kind of freelance development as of console ports. So I've worked on some Switch games, and I have also done some work or I have also done my own work for my own kind of studio or independent, just myself, called Wacom Games. So I have a lot of experience in the sort of indie game area, not so much in like big studios, but definitely some indie game work. And actually, where I live is I live in Japan. Um, and I work remotely for the studio in Summerside in PEI. So that's just a little bit about me. I went to the University of Prince Edward Island in Prince Edward Island and got my degree in computer science with a specialization in video game programming. And I also went through their co-op program as well, which was definitely a big help for me because it allowed me to get some experience In fact, the first job that I did in co-op was as a game tester. So maybe let's move on to the next question. All right, number 2. What are some of the tips or advice you would give to students who want to pursue a career in this field? So this is a pretty good question. There's a lot of advice that you can give. Probably the biggest one. Sorry, I keep looking over here. I have another video or another window here of myself, so sometimes I'm looking at myself. Just move this over here. So as I was saying, probably the biggest piece of advice would be just make stuff. Like that's the most important thing. It's just making games. I mean, especially if you go to university, like a lot of the stuff that you're going to learn is going to be kind of like the theoretical or like the I don't know about philosophical, but maybe like kind of everything behind the scenes in game development. And you're not going to necessarily like learn how to make a game, or I mean, at least for me, my final project was making a game. And there was a few classes where we would make like a little game or something like that. But most of what you're learning is a lot of theory and whatnot. So it's important to find an area where you can actually just make video games for fun. And so that's why I would definitely recommend that you try and just make whatever game, whatever you want. Like go on Google, search, Unity tutorials or Game Maker tutorials, whatever engine you want to use, and just try and find a tutorial for that engine that you're interested in. And, find like a tutorial that shows a game that you want to make. Because if you can, if you can do that, like that's a good building block. It's a good area to start. And you can just kind of, as you keep doing that, you'll honestly keep improving. That's how I started with Unity. I just found a tutorial and I kind of made that, and then I kind of went from there. And then I was kind of thrown into it pretty quickly because within less than a year of knowing Unity, I had to make my final project for university in Unity, which was pretty interesting, but and kind of unique too, because typically at UPEI, our final project was actually made using like an in-school engine that's made just for the class, and but I just happened to do my final project when nobody else was doing theirs, so I was the only person working on my final project, and as a result, I got to use Unity because it's just a little easier to make a game with if you're only working by yourself. What was I going to say? One of the, right. So about tutorials. So, what's important is try and just play. Like when you're working on a tutorial, see if you can kind of tweak it a little bit. Like don't copy it exactly. One thing that's easy to tweak is art. Just change up the art a little bit. One of the first tutorials I worked on, or I tried to make, it wasn't in Unity, it was in another game engine called libgdx. And when I was working in this tutorial, it was a tutorial for Flappy Bird. So I don't know, some people may know that. If you don't, you can look it up. But basically, instead of having a little bird that jumps up and down, I created a pig with wings, and then he would jump up and down, and he would collect golden apples, and he would have to avoid these like silos, like these farm silos. And that was just my way of trying to tweak that tutorial, so I wasn't doing it exactly. And you can do a lot of things like that. I think there was another libgdx tutorial that was a bucket, and there was like little drops of water falling down, and you have to collect the drops of water in the bucket. And you have to avoid, I think it was anvils that were falling down. And so I tweaked it by, instead of a bucket, it's a guy in like a fancy suit that I was pretending was kind of like a tax man or like an accountant or something, and then there was money falling down. You have to collect the money and avoid the anvil. So, making little changes like that to a tutorial, it's important because if you show it to a studio, then it shows them that you have a little bit of creativity. If you just show them a tutorial and you remade it exactly like the tutorial, it's just not as interesting to a studio. So it's very important to kind of try and do stuff like that to show kind of your creative side. Let's see, what other advice could I give? Um, oh man, I think you should try figure out if kind of how you want to get into the industry. If you want to be a programmer, you can go to university if it's kind of a viable option for you. Like if you're able to afford it, um, then it can be a good path to go down because you can meet people in the industry because a lot of universities are going to have people from the games industry working there. You'll also get to meet your classmates. These are people that you will potentially run into at other studios when all of you have graduated. And so it's kind of good to meet those people as well. And what else? What other bits of advice? If you're kind of wondering, like if you're not sure, do I want to get in the industry or not, then you could try QA. Like I said, that was something that I started. That was where I first worked. Was I did some work in QA, and it was it was like a good learning experience. Like it helped me to become a better. It helped me kind of get my foot in the door and understand business a little bit. And kind of get a little experience. I would have that on my resume. It was definitely very useful. Not great pay wise, but still pretty useful. Um, and then let's see, other bits of advice. I know that there's more. There's a lot more advice I could be saying, but gosh, I can't even think what like. I mean, the main thing is just like make some stuff. Like um, if you want to give a resume to a company or something, you need to have a portfolio. One thing, if you decide not to go to university, then you might want to have like a public GitHub page so that companies could see kind of what your code is like how it looks. Just because if you go to university, then you're going to learn a lot of that stuff kind of you're going to learn all about object-oriented programming and things like that so that, you don't have to be as worried about that. If you go to university, you kind of already understand that stuff. But if you're kind of teaching yourself, then studios will want to see to make sure that you understand those concepts. Let's move to the next question. I can always come back to some of these questions if other thoughts pop into my head. Some typical roles in game development and what is your role in the company? Well, let's see. I mean, there's a lot of roles in game development, especially at like big studio. Typically though, you're going to have kind of junior programmers, junior artists, and you're going to have kind of maybe senior programmers, senior artists, maybe a lead programmer, lead artist, and maybe like, it could also be like a technical lead that's in charge of kind of I guess I think they're kind of like they manage the technology or the tech, obviously, for the game. But yeah, and then you're gonna obviously have like a project manager, somebody who's delegating tasks out to the leads, and then the leads are delegating tasks out to kind of the seniors and the juniors, and they could also be doing some development of their own. I do a lot of development. So it just kind of depends on the studio. When it comes to art, there can be a lot of like even deeper separations. You can have animators, 3D modelers, etc. Really, like there's a lot in art. UI artists. You can have network programmers, so people who work on kind of the network or like who create the servers and kind of the back end. kind of like level designers. They create levels for the game, or gameplay designers. I think they kind of like will kind of try to sort of improve the gameplay and get it feeling right. And then of course there's also QA. So you're going to have QA testers. You're going to have like I believe we call them leads, like QA leads that are in charge of all the game testers. So when I was a QA tester, I had a lead tester that would tell me, like every day I would be told who was going to be my lead, and then the lead would tell me what project was I going to be working on and what was I going to be doing in that project. But so yeah, like there's a lot of things like that. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the lead programmer at Funky Fingers, so I'm kind of, when it comes to programming, I'm kind of one of the top of the area, and I'm kind of in charge of making sure our code works basically. And it takes a while to get really good at that, but eventually you do get better and get comfortable at it too. Like I'm very comfortable at my job. All right. What does a typical day in your life look like? Well, so since I work from home, I mean, my day can start kind of whenever I want it to start. I might start work at, 7 or 8, maybe even 10. If I have something to do in the morning, then I may not start till 12. And basically all I have to do is just get my 8 hours in. So I could also possibly, sorry, my nose is a bit itchy. I could also work for a bit and then stop and then work later. It's all up to me, but typically I'm going to get up in the morning, take a look, see if I have any messages from my boss or anybody else, kind of answer them, check emails, all that stuff. And then I'm going to be working on, at least one game, maybe 2 games, like one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And, usually we'll have some kind of a task list, and I'm just going through the task list and find tasks I can complete. And then, at the end of the day, most cases, I'm giving a build to my boss. He'll test it out, see how it feels, and then we kind of go from there. And then it's the same thing the next day, and then, things change when you get closer to release. But that's kind of a typical day there for sure. All right, let's see what else. Oh, this is a good one. So, working with an indie game team or working with a big game company, what was your experience? So I have not worked with any big game companies, but I have worked for some like big tech companies or bigger tech companies, not like huge ones like Google, but still pretty big ones in PEI. And then obviously I've worked for indie game companies. I mean, I think obviously there are some obvious differences. Like you're probably gonna not make quite as much money working at working on an indie studio, but there could be potential for you to receive some royalties for the game that you're working on. If it's a really small studio, then you might split profit, stuff like that. So there's, if you have a game that does really well, it could end up paying you better than like working at a big company. But that's kind of rare. A few other things, there's maybe differences in benefits. And in terms of stability, it really depends. I mean, big companies can fall, big companies can let a bunch of people go. But similarly, indie companies, they have to make money, and if they don't make money, then the whole thing could shut down. But then there's still potential for you to go to big companies at that point. Though indie companies do tend to be more kind of like accommodating, I feel, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like they're very so when I told my boss that I wanted to move to Japan, because my wife's Japanese and we wanted to live here, he said that I could do it, and if I was interested, like we could try and see if we could make it still work so that I could work remotely, and I was definitely happy to hear that, and we've made it work. I mean, I've been working remotely for like 4 years almost, I think I've been working remotely more now than I had worked in the office. Um, and it's great. I mean, it's great to work remotely. There are some negatives. Like there's a big time difference that that can cause issues, but it's nothing that you can't handle really. Um, Gosh, I'm sorry, I lost track again. What was it here? So right. So my point there though was that because I was working for an indie company, they were willing to offer and say, even if you are going to move somewhere else, we'd like you to still work with us. Whereas if I was working at a big studio, then they would most likely say, well, good luck, because they can probably replace me with somebody else. But at a indie studio, it's harder to replace people. And so that's kind of one of the benefits. Although with big studios, if they're trying to hire somebody and they have a lot of money, like sometimes you can get good offers. Like if a big studio wanted to hire me, they may reach out to me and they may even offer to move me from Japan to wherever they are because they can afford to do that. So that can be kind of a benefit of a big studio, but usually you have to be pretty specialized at that point. You have to have a lot of experience in the industry and kind of have a good reputation to be able to do that, or to be able to have that happen. All right, let's see, number 6. Oh yeah, this is a tricky one here. What future do you see for the job market in this career, and what trends do you see developing over the next few years? Let's see. Well, for future, I mean, I definitely see more remote jobs. I think they're already becoming pretty popular. I think a lot of game developers like myself are realizing that it's pretty doable to work from home. I mean, it's certainly mobile companies, like you don't have any kind of special hardware to deal with. It's a little harder if you're working on consoles, because a lot of that hardware you don't want to be passing around to different places. But when you're working in a mobile company, a lot of people have mobile phones, so it's not as big of a deal. Um, but so I do see that being a trend. I mean, it's kind of already a trend, really, but I can see it going even further. One thing I've been kind of curious about, with things like Game Pass becoming very popular. I've always been curious if maybe we might someday see a game studio whose job it is to just produce Game Pass games. So like, I mean, games that are only available on Game Pass, like they're not sold in stores or online, they're just in Game Pass. I could see that happening. I don't know how people would feel about that. I definitely think some people would be, not happy with that, but I could still really see that happening. There's potential for that. Um, Another trend that's kind of it's off and on, it seems, is NFTs. It's definitely seems to be a trend that companies want to do it, want to be a part of, want to like get into the NFT business, but it definitely doesn't seem to be something that consumers are interested in. So I don't know really what the future for NFTs will be. I myself, I haven't done anything in that area, but you never know. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. All right. Now there was one other thing, right? Yeah. One other thing that could also happen in the future would be more unions. There's and like QA teams are kind of unionizing now, which I think is very good because it's definitely kind of a difficult area to work in. Like I said, when I was working in QA, I was making minimum wage at the time, which was $10 an hour. So it's um, it can be I mean, it can still be a fun job. Like I considered leaving university and just doing QA, but I ended up pushing through and getting my degree. But it's Oh, we lost connection to my webcam. Kind of interesting timing, isn't it? Oh, we really lost it, didn't we? 1 second here. Oops. Oh, nobody wants to see that. My God. Okay. What's that? There we go. Sorry. I was all prepared to do this event with my Chromebook, and then I found out that it seems like Chromebooks can't really handle Zoom very well. So that's why you see this thing here, this IV cam in my feed here, is because like I'm using this application to be able to use my phone as a webcam for this feed. All right, so it is 12:55, about 5 minutes left. Maybe I'll go back to the advice option, see what else I could say, because there's a few other things that are kind of coming to mind. One of the things I would give for advice is, if you can take any kind of programming class, anything like that, like especially in high school, like do it. It's actually very valuable and very helpful, like to take a class of some kind, because like here, just a second, moving a window over here. Yeah, it can be very helpful because you never know what what will happen. I find that they're just like really like programming is something where once you've done a few classes of it, it's very easy to do other classes. Oh wow, do we have an attendant? Oh, I see. Okay. Oops. Let me see. Oh, looks like we have an attendant. Anyways, I'm going to be ending this session soon. I think I see that Brad Bass is in here. I know that you have a session right after this, so I want to, close down so that you'll be able to do yours next. Um, yeah, I hope that some people are able to find this video or something. I don't know if any other session will be planned or if this is it, but I still enjoy talking to the camera, and I guess I will see. I don't know. Take care. Let's see.